Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. My name is Bernadette Desir, and I'm your host. And joining me today is special guest Fiona Cutts. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. It's really nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Fiona, where about are you tuning in from?
I'm actually tuning in from Ecuador, and
Oh,
I've been living here. Yeah, I'm from the UK originally, but I've been living in Ecuador for a few months now, and I've kind of been alternating between this amazing, magical, high altitude city, and at the moment I'm in an equally amazing in a different way. I'm deep down in the heart of the Ecuador countryside. It's like it feels like it's when you travel there, you feel like you're going to the depths of the world, and it's just really quiet and beautiful and tranquil. So that's where I am.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I noticed there's a little bit of delay between the words and then the movement. Do you see that as well?
Ah, no, I haven't, but maybe I'm not focusing on that. No, I don't see it.
Okay, okay. Okay, that's okay. I can hear you, you can hear me, so that's okay. Yeah. So how long have you been living in Ecuador for?
Just a few months, but it's kind of I've been a no, I've been without a sort of proper home base since COVID. Actually, I mean, I didn't. It was kind of something that I just chose in the moment with COVID, and then realized I liked and continued. But now I'm looking to be a bit more stable and at least be in Ecuador, even if I move around Ecuador a bit.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Where are you from? I'm picking accent.
Yeah, I'm from England. Yeah,
Oh,
so I
nice.
grew up near London. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
awesome. That's really cool.
It's a
Yeah.
long way from home. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so Fiona, why don't you start by telling us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a life coach for ladies who are shy with sex. And so I have a business that's called Sex and the Shy Girl. And as these things tend to be, it's based on my own journey. So I was very shy with everything in my life, actually. And I think what I see is that the subject of sex just exponentializes everything. So I went through sort of healing my shyness in other areas of my life, and then I was like, oh, I'm still shy with sex. How am I going to change that? And then I found different ways of changing it. But what I notice with the ladies that I work with is that it requires a lot of guts and vulnerability to look at this part of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Yeah. And because so many different cultures, that kind of stuff is taboo. I know in mine, you don't, we just don't mention stuff like that in public or, yeah. Have you had to blend in different cultures with the work that you're doing?
Yes, yes. So I work online and I work with people in different parts of the world. And actually, I've worked with a lovely lady who lives in Kuwait, and it's like in Kuwait in the Middle East.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like it's not just that the energy around sex is taboo. It's like it's very difficult just living your life as a woman there. I mean, and this amazing young lady that I know has found a way of kind of honoring the culture, but still finding her own freedom, including her sexual freedom. So so it is different in different parts of the world. And I would say I work with a lot of people from Europe. And so I'm from England, where
Mhm.
it's like for a lot of us in England, the point of view is you don't talk about stuff like that. Certainly in my family, we did not talk about it at all. And but then on the other hand, we're also aware of
Mhm.
energies and stuff that isn't said, that it was like, although we didn't talk about sex, I got all the sort of download from my dad, be good, be careful,
Mhm.
don't. And then as I was growing into a teenager and a young woman, don't actually, but he didn't really know what to do with me when I started to change and was no longer a little girl. And I think that's really common in a lot of cultures.
Yeah.
And then with my mum, it was just like, just wouldn't go there. And so I grew up with this kind of total suppression around it. But also, I think my overall shyness came from my dad being really critical. And I learned at a young age that the safest thing to do was just to shut up, stay quiet, stay beneath the radar, and to be honest, try to be perfect. So it's like I created this whole perfect persona, which wasn't me at all. And of course, when you start to live from a space that isn't you, it all comes crashing down. And that's what happened for me at a certain point.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. In your own opinion, in words, how important is it for us to teach about our sexuality to our preteens or teens? I don't want to say kids because of the word tying together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. No, I understand. Yeah, I understand. I think it's really important. I think it's hugely important. I think some of the sort of the prejudices and the taboos come because there isn't this, it's kind of turned into this big thing by being made so secret in so many parts of the world. It's made into this big thing. And so we have our lives here, and it's like our sex lives over here. And the sex lives are kind of taboo and quiet. And we don't even know what we're doing. It's like, I think a lot of teenagers or 20-somethings, or even if you have sex when you're later, it's like the first time you come together for sex, neither person has no idea what they're doing. And it's all, it doesn't have to be like that. It's like having the information normalizes it so that we have our lives that include sex, our lives that include sensuality and enjoyment. Because it's like when we have sex over one side, we also tend to lose that kind of enjoyment of life. It's almost like the way that I see it, it's like we have sensuality, which we can have in our everyday life. And that leads to enjoying ourselves more in the bedroom and with sex. So it's like if we have sex in the bedroom over here, we also lose a lot of that sort of sensuality and pleasure that we can have in our everyday life, which also becomes taboo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there should be more people in the line of work that you're doing to help people, because we all know it happens. We may not want to talk about it. We all know how pregnancy happened. We all know the birth, and yet it's like no one's talking about it. And those who choose to talk about it or shame. Mhm,
Yes,
mhm.
yes. Often that's the case. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And would you say the lack of confidence that most people have, I know for sure it's from trauma, but how can they overcome that trauma they've experienced to have a enjoyable, fulfilling life?
Yeah, so there are several ways that I work with people. So I'm a sexological body worker, but I'm also a trained energy healer and life coach.
Mm,
So I do work with people to look at what they've learnt culturally, which we've talked about. It's like, for me, it was like, basically, don't talk about it, pretend it doesn't exist. And, working with different people around the globe, I just see that every country, every culture has their own version of that. It's like, I doubt, I mean, I'd love to know if there is, but I doubt if there's a culture on the planet that's truly open around sex. So I work with the ladies to release some of the points of view that they have from their family, that they have maybe historically from their female line, from their male line. So we work to release that guilt and shame. And of course, with some people, it's not just the conditioning. Some people have literally been physically, sexually abused, in which case there's more work to be done to release that. And I do believe that can be released. It may take time. It may, it for sure requires courage to go there and look at that, but that can also be released. So that's part of the work I do, kind of release the things that's in the way of enjoying our bodies. But then At the same time as that, I also give the ladies exercises which invite their bodies to more pleasure. And when I say more pleasure, it's like at first, it's about just enjoying our bodies moment by moment by moment. I mean, I'm in this absolutely stunningly beautiful place. So it's kind of easy to step out and feel the sun on your skin and to breathe the beautiful clean air and to be like, oh, I feel good. But it's like I was just living in a city. It can be harder to do that there. But the reality is we can enjoy ourselves, enjoy our bodies, be present in our bodies wherever we are. And when we start to have that presence in our bodies, and I then look at actually giving them some somatic exercises to literally, it's like, so often sex is only about the genitals. And and there's nothing wrong with enjoying your genitals, I'm all for it. But actually, sex can be much bigger and wider than that. And so I give the ladies some exercises that allows them to discover which parts of their bodies are, well, in fact, my point of view is that we can enjoy it once we start to wake up our bodies, we can enjoy the whole of our bodies. And when we start to wake up the whole of our bodies, actually the pleasure that comes from a genital or a vaginal orgasm can be way greater. And so I give the ladies exercises to start playing with them, to start discovering their own bodies. But what occurs when they start to let go of the trauma and the conditioning and they start to find out what's true for them and their bodies, actually, their whole point of view about themselves changes. Because if you invest the time letting go of trauma, you invest the time waking up your body, seeing what's pleasurable for your body, actually that's an act of self-love for you and your body. And so what tends to happen with shy girls before they're healed is like they'll go into a sexual relationship or a sexual encounter feeling less than the other person. And it's almost like they're kind of like, oh, will you look after me? Will you heal me? It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so shy. It's that kind of energy. But actually, if you spent time releasing trauma, if you spent time finding what's true for you, when you actually come to a sexual relationship, you're in a much more equal place and you're able to say, hey, here am I. And I know what I like sexually and I'm actually embodied. I've let go of some of these crazy points of view around shame and guilt. And I'm here ready to have sex. And so you have that kind of confidence. But also what occurs is that when you're not confident, when you're shy, when you're stuck in the guilt and the shame, what tends to happen is that you don't choose the best partners. And we know this. It's like when we have lowest self-esteem, we end up with the people who are going to be unkind to us. So there's a kind of a magic that occurs as we start to attract a different type of person. And then from that space, the sex can be much more about exploring each other's bodies rather than kind of wham, bam, orgasm, finish. It's like it can be much more an interaction, discovery of each other's bodies, but also beyond the body, it's like there can be that communion and connection, which often we don't have with sex.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. So much to unpack.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's true. I talked about it quickly, but there's a lot in there. Yeah.
It's such an important topic that we don't talk about it. So I'm just happy you're talking about it. Somebody's talking about
Thank you.
it. So maybe we can talk about it more. Let's talk a little bit about, let's touch on self-love. All right. If man, woman, okay. Let's say growing up, mom and dad or friends, or they were bullied and called names because of they were too thin or too heavy, and just all those awful stuff that people do for absolutely no reason most of the time. And here they are as adults, they grow up, they're in a very loving marriage or relationship, and they've had kids. Their bodies changed. They don't love how they look, the cellulites, all the pores, all of it. How can they heal all those wounds, to be able to enjoy their life? Because if someone doesn't love their bodies, they're gonna think their partners don't love it either. So it's gonna put a block
Yeah,
for them.
absolutely. Yeah, so here's the thing. Our society is so focused on the visual. And I'll just tell you my story, and I see it happening with the ladies I work with. So I mean, I'm very blessed with my body, but when I was younger, I had pretty, I'm going to just say, according to the standards of this reality, I had quite a perfect body, and I hated her. I absolutely hated my body. It's like, because of what had happened in my childhood, it was a funny thing, and maybe some of you can relate to this. On the one hand, I had this, hey, I'm pretty cool, but it's like, I look pretty good and you should appreciate me. But that was all a kind of an act. Beneath that, I kind of had been so damaged by what happened in my childhood that I couldn't see really that my body was beautiful. And what's occurred for me as I've done the healing work is that here I am, I'm now over 60, and I love my body way more than ever before. And is she objectively as beautiful as she was? I mean, no, absolutely not. It's like I have all the things that occur as you get older. I mean, I haven't put on weight, but I have other things going on in my body. And actually, through the work that I've done, I'm in this space of, hey, I'm really grateful for my body. And there's a kind of a magic that can occur when you do the healing work that for me, and it's the same when I look for, if I'm not in a relationship and I'm wondering, and I'm like, oh, who am I attracted to? It's not necessarily like it was in the past, the kind of the men who look good. It's like I can see beyond that, and I can see the men who are likely to be kind to me. And so the sex is less about the visual and more about actually what can I receive here. And what I'm finding is that actually the pleasure that I can have now goes way beyond the pleasure that I could have when I was younger, simply because I was so estranged from my body. So my body might have looked good, but I couldn't receive. I couldn't receive that she looked good, but I also, that kind of hating of my body, and I'll say it that strongly, it was hating, actually stopped the pleasure that was possible. And so that's possible for other people. It's possible for, for people who are much younger than me, who've maybe put on weight, or it's possible for people who are older than me. I have a Facebook group, and there's an amazing lady in the Facebook group. I think she's in her mid-60s, and she has a lover who's in his 20s, and she's like, you know what? I just enjoy him. She doesn't have a point of view about her age or about how she looks. She's just like willing to receive from this much younger man. So it is possible. So it's if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I don't think it's possible for me because of blah, 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 blah. And that blah, 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 blah will be different for all of us. I mean, it's very common for it to be weight. It's also very common for it to be age, but it may be something that's unique to you. You may have your unique blah, 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 blah going on, but actually it's possible to release that and to just in a way be more with the sensations of the body than how the body looks. And actually, I remember being at a festival, and we were blindfolded, and we literally were the organizers kind of introduced us to people who we may not normally have been introduced to. So I think I was in my 50s at the time, and I was introduced to this young guy, and we just kind of perceived each other through touch and through non-eye awareness, if you like. And it was a really, really sweet connection, but we would never have probably connected if we just been looking at each other. And yeah, we're so focused on the looks, and actually there's something that transcends that when you're willing to do the work. And when I say the work, it doesn't have to be long, arduous, and difficult. And but we can release the stuff that's in the way of us really, really enjoying our bodies.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. What are your thoughts on age gaps? Because you give us an example there, because
Yes.
I'm younger, but you know, there's different energies that people have, right? Like a younger person would
Yes.
have more energy, an older person, not necessarily. It could go both ways. What are your thoughts?
Yes, it's a really interesting question. And I think that, I mean, obviously there are things that go with different stages of life. So if you're a guy who wants to have a child, you probably wouldn't come and find me.
Mhm,
But so there are those practical things going on.
mhm,
But I think other than that, we it's funny because I guess when we're younger, we tend to, you know, all our friends in school are the same age. All our, you know, if you go to university, it's the same age. And then, but then at a
mhm,
certain point, we start to meet different people from different walks of life. And
mhm.
I would say it's like I have some friends who are way younger than me and older than me.
Yeah.
And so I tend to interact with people based on their energy. And I guess that goes along with what I was saying about the visual can become less important. And so if the visual is less important, then we may find ourselves attracted to someone who's 20 years younger or 20 years older, based in a way on who they actually are rather than their body. So
Mhm.
but I also think it's really, really personal. I mean, I remember when I was much younger, I had friends who always seemed to have way older boyfriends, and that's what they liked, and they still do. And then other people tend to be the other way. So I think it's very, very, like all of sex, it's very, very personal.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Let's talk about, you know, in some cultures, there's arranged marriages, and
Yes.
sometimes they're attracted to that person, sometimes they're not. I don't know too much about that kind of topic, so I don't know which direction to go, but give us your take on it.
Okay, so I actually lived in India for a while, so I kind of know a bit about it from being immersed in that culture. I lived in Delhi for 3 years some time ago.
Mhm,
And so of course there can be those really lucky people who have an arranged marriage and the attraction is right there.
mhm,
And there are points of view that actually you can well you can grow to love somebody. And
mhm,
I think if you don't have a choice, then maybe you just get on with it.
mhm,
And that doesn't
mhm,
sound very, very much fun, but actually I think we know that in life, that if there's something that's kind of imposed upon you, you can also
mhm.
choose your response to that. You can choose to make the best of it, or you can fight against it.
Yeah.
um yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I think I want to say a bit, actually, as I wanted to say with the age question, it's
Mhm,
really, really, really personal. And when I was living in England, I used to have a hands-on bodywork practice, which included sexological bodywork. And often when people would come for a hands-on session, they would be like, their question would kind of become, am I normal? It's like they might not say it like that, but am I normal with sex? And
mhm,
it's like when I actually looked at it, and it was normally loads of words.
mhm,
And it's the same with this. It's like you may find that an arranged marriage is perfect for you because you don't have to go through all the kind of um, well, all the stuff that some of us go through, dating and wrong person and right person and spending time and energy on that. So it may be perfect for you. Or you
mhm,
may be somebody who it feels like it's the worst thing in the world because it takes away that fundamental freedom of choice.
mhm.
So I think it's really personal. And I mean, and to give you my kind of
Yeah.
personal point of view on it, it's like I'm very grateful that I didn't have that, because we're also different. And
Mhm,
um and I guess even without the arranged marriage, it's like in many parts of the world, there's still the point of view that that you're in one relationship. Well, basically, when you get married, or when you choose to commit to somebody, you're in that relationship, and it should, first of all, it should last your whole life. But second of all, if it's best if it does. So there are all those points of view, and my own point of view is that relationships have their course. So my own point of view, there's nothing wrong if you want to have a one-night stand, nothing wrong with that. Nothing failing about a marriage that lasts for 1 year, 10 years, or 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we hear nowadays of people getting divorced in their 70s even, because they realize that they want something different.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose underlying everything that I'm saying is that sex is such an area where there's so much judgment. And we talked about that at the beginning, all the judgment from the culture and the family, that actually we're all so different that whatever you desire sexually, and whether that's getting married and staying with that one person and being in love your whole life, I mean, that's amazing. But if you're not that person, if you're the person who has these relationships that last less time, please don't make yourself wrong for anything that's going on for you. It's like, as long as what you're doing sexually isn't harming you or the other person, my point of view, go for it. And yes, there'll be people who may judge that, but when you're clear in yourself, oh no, this is really what makes me happy, and I'm not going to judge that. It doesn't matter if other people judge you. It's like, if you're not judging you, you have you and your own sexual reality, and that's what's important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, there's a lot of judgments, and I don't think we can say enough to break that stigma. Right? Because here you're doing the amazing work that you're doing, yet there are people who may listen to this like, you know what I mean? There's always that little judgment based on what either you share, I share. It's just not caring, but also be open-hearted, open-minded to receive people who want to learn and know more. And I think the more that we normalize those topics, the easier it is to deal with and talk about. What's there to be ashamed about?
Absolutely.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I love that you don't get it. And I think that these conversations, it's very interesting. One of the things that I offer free is a Facebook group. And so every day I'm in the group and I'm basically starting different conversations. And pretty much every week I receive a message from one of the women in the group. And they're like, oh my God, just being in the group, even when so some of the questions are kind of like, I think this morning I asked something like, is it difficult for you to leave a relationship that you know it's over? So that's kind of, well, it's not so hard to answer that, but some of them are quite sexy questions. And so there are women in the group who are really shy, so they don't respond to the questions, but they see other people responding, or they see me just talking to myself. It's like some days I'm just talking to myself.
Yeah.
I don't care, but I also know that people are reading it because I get these messages. It's like it's a shy girls group. Of course, there are going to be people who don't want to speak in that, but people say, oh my God, just being in the group, I'm getting more relaxed around sex. Just from being in the group, I'm loving my body more. Just from being in the group, I'm able to communicate with my partner with more ease. And so just having these conversations starts to break down these walls and barriers and create something different. And it's not for everyone. I know that. It's like, I know this types of things I'm talking about. And there's no wrongness. It's like for who resonates with what I'm saying, who doesn't. It's like there's nothing wrong or bad about anything here. But if you're listening to this and you're like, oh wow, that's interesting, that's changing for something for me, then well, I invite you to follow that and see what else is possible for you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Let's talk about energy, because you are an energy healer. when I think of energy, it could be infinite of the list of things I could put together that are energy. I've talked to different energy
Yes.
healers. Tell me, what are your approaches and methods? How do you release and remove uh, sexual trauma or energy from your clients and people you help?
So the first thing to say is that it requires a level of it requires a level of courage in the person who's had the abuse. And so what I tend to find is that it's women who I work with now, some of the women have already done quite a lot of other healing work. So they have the ability to really be present and without well, and the possibility of looking at what occurred without blaming themselves, because it's very common for all kinds of abuse, sexual or, the kind of abuse I had, which was mainly verbal abuse. But it's very common well, actually, I was going to say when we're younger, it's very common, whatever age we are, to feel if someone abuses us, that in some way we deserve it. In some way, we're wrong for that we blame ourselves for that. And so it requires courage to be open to a different possibility, that you were just a child in the wrong place at the wrong time, if you like. And so to answer your question more, so those are the type of women who are likely to come, the women who have already done some work on themselves and are kind of in that space of willing to not blame themselves. And the work that I do to release trauma in the body, it is hands-on work that I do to release that trauma. And it's hard to, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. So what happens when, I'll give the example of me with verbal abuse, but it's the same with physical abuse and with sexual abuse, but it's easier for me to talk about me than to talk about a client. So when say my dad shouted at me when I was little, when he told me basically that I amounted to nothing, that I was useless, that I was worthless, all of that kind of hits the energy field and then hits the body. So it literally gets trapped in the body. So it's really common if you've had sexual abuse that part of your body is numb. And to be honest, the whole of my body was numb from the abuse that I had. And I actually, my whole life broke down and I had chronic fatigue syndrome. So it was like the verbal abuse and some physical abuse was so much in my body that I couldn't function anymore. And so and then the energy healing work literally invites that to release by starting to express. I mean, I had so much anger inside, and I started to, in a safe environment, express that anger and express it verbally, express it literally through, we did things like hitting cushions and stuff like that, because often when we are abused, and as I said, I work with shy girls, it's like often abused shy girls can have this massive anger inside and justified anger at being treated like that. And so we find safe ways to be able to express that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I was thinking of the word consent, right? Because obviously people who have experienced those horrific traumas as kids and as any age, right? But it's a bit harder. And I know that there is still a Me Too movement. And, I'm encouraging people to not carry what they're going through alone, and to get help, that it's okay to get help. Yeah. What are your thoughts? What would you say to women who are struggling with trauma like that?
Yes. Yeah. So I think it can be horrible. I mean, really devastatingly horrible to feel alone with it.
Yeah.
And this is great where the world is changing, because I don't think I had Well, I remember when I did my energy healing course, and I was in my late 40s by then. And I remember it's like I think there were 14 of us, and other people were talking about, I think there were 2 people who'd been sexually abused. And I was kind of in this space, oh, no, I wasn't abused. And my friend, who had more awareness of all this stuff than me, but she was a participant, she said, hey, stop that. You were abused. It's like that verbal abuse is still abuse. And to be honest, there are things, it's like there are so many unkindnesses on this planet. Even when we have parents who are doing their best, there are so many little unkindnesses in the way that we behave that everybody has had some kind of abuse. So just knowing that you're not alone with it, that other people have had it. And yeah, just reaching out. I mean, there are all kinds of organizations that you can reach out to now, but it's like, as the shy girls in my group are experiencing, it's like just hearing other people talk about it, their experience can help. But when you start to be able to actually verbalize some of the things that happened and verbalize it enough to ask for help, that requires a level of courage that is the beginning of the healing journey. And it is courageous to in a way, to have the guts not to become this. I mean, this may sound harsh to some people, but to have the guts to not make yourself a perpetual victim. It's like, I could have stayed silent. When I got chronic fatigue syndrome, it was like a wake-up call. And I could have just chosen to stay with that. And it's like, oh, poor me, I got chronic fatigue syndrome. I don't know why. But I was willing at a certain, I mean, it took me some time to get to this point of being willing to do it. But I was willing at some points to look at, oh, maybe it wasn't random chance. Oh, yeah, it's true. My dad was really horrible to me when I was little. Maybe that's why this is all going on. So it's not that it was my fault that he was that way to me, but it's like, I'm able to, we all have the possibility of looking at the stuff that happened to us from a non-victim space. And it's an interesting space because it's like, no child or no person should be treated with verbal abuse, with sexual abuse, with physical abuse. Of course they shouldn't be. But actually, we all know this. There are some people who heal from these things and lead fabulous lives, and there are others who don't. So see what's around you, see who you can reach out to, and take the steps to become one of those people who actually heals from the abuse that you should never have had. That's how I would frame it.
Yeah, and to be surrounded by like-minded people, if I may add. Because often we feel alone in our pain and the trauma and everything we're experiencing. And it's not good to suffocate alone with something so heavy. There are resources. They even have male or female workers, and there are hotlines you can call and report stuff, right? It's just to take the necessary steps that are required to speak out and to be brave enough to say that's enough of suffering, because it really does impact someone's life, like on all level.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
It truly does. And I just want to kind of, we've talked about the abuse, and it's good that we've talked about that. But I just like to say that it's like, and maybe it sounds kind of, if you listen to this, oh, I was abused and now I have to go through this horrible thing of talking about it and healing it, and it all sounds hard work. So what I'd like to just bring in is that the rewards are immense. I mean, you heard me just talk about how I have way more pleasure now than when I was like a 20-something with my kind of beautiful body. It's like the rewards can be immense, and not just sexual pleasure. I mean, sexual pleasure, I'm a great fan of that, and that's why I've created this one. But actually, it's not just that. It's like when you heal, it's not like you just heal that part of you that related to sexual abuse, or in my case, that part of me that related to my dad shouting at me. It doesn't work like that. It's like every time you take the step to heal something from your past, all of your life can break open. It's like, it's not that I just have pleasure during sex. It's like I have a very pleasureful life a lot of the time because I've taken the steps to release what was in the way of that, and just in a way just go for it. It's like there'll be people who will be like, oh, you were abused, oh, you had that, oh yeah, your dad was like that. It's like I still have people who say to me things like, oh, your dad, he was so difficult, how have you moved past that? It's like there are people who believe you can't move past that. So it actually takes that word again, courage, guts, to know that you can actually. And, you know, some people won't like it if you start stepping into a better and more enjoyable and more pleasurable life. But that actually has nothing to do with you, but everything to do with them. It's like your friends who actually have a great life that they're enjoying will be like, go you, I'm so happy for you that you're enjoying your life. It's only the people who aren't enjoying that will feel resentful when you start to step into more enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know there's also judgment around, I'm gonna get fired for this. Well, I'm my own boss, so good luck. Okay, there's judgments with specific religious practices. I'm gonna focus on myself. You know, I grew up with different religions, Christianity being one of the harshest one to judge me and many other
Yeah.
people. I was a teen mom. I'm still a teen mom, right? I got judgment there
Yeah.
because I wasn't married. I'm still not married. I
Mm.
actually do not care to be married. I've seen what my parents went through with divorce and infidelity. I don't want that. I don't want it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say to people like me?
So my point of view is choose what's true for you. It's like I hear you talking about that, and it's like well, one of the ways that I see energy working is like when you made that joke about, oh, I'm going to be fired, and we both laughed. It's like that's a kind of a freedom laugh, because it's like you've chosen what works for you.
Yeah.
It's like you became a teenage mum, and you know, you still are, as you say, and you chose not to get married. And it's like, if that's what your path is, you'll feel good with that. If you're listening to this and you don't want to have a child until you're 35, but that makes you happy, then that's what's true for you. And one of the ways that I love to lead my life is to just see if something makes me feel happy. It's like I mean, a completely different example. I just moved from the city to the countryside. When I chose to do it, it made me so happy. And sure enough, now I'm here, I'm happy. So it's like this, the stuff that makes you happy is what's true for you. So if you're listening to this, your life and your happiness story, if you like, will be different from mine, will be different from yours. So, and this is where I say it's like I look at you, and there's no judgment in your world when you say, hey, I was a teen mom, hey, I'm still not getting married, that's my choice, take it or leave it. And it's kind of not an aggressive take it or leave it, but it's like my sense is that you're so clear about you and what's true for you. And when we have that clarity, it's like we just live our lives and we're happy. And but nobody else. It's like if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I think I'll do what Bernadette's doing, or I think I'll do what Fiona's doing. It doesn't work like that. It's like you have to find out what your own happiness path is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why my podcast is a no judgment zone at all. I really don't care what people believe, what they look like, what they do, what they did. I don't care. What brings you fulfillment, happiness, and how you spreading love and helping the world become what it should be, what it should have always been, right? And it's that type of freedom
Yeah.
I think most of us crave and all of us should
Yes.
have, right? Can you imagine if
Yes.
the whole entire world looked like me? How boring would that be? Right? We need each other's uniqueness. We need each other's gifts. And we also need to respect and love each other. And which takes me to my next question to you. It's about boundaries. Some people struggle to say yes or no, or they say yes just to please someone, and then they get intimate and they feel like crap.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so it's really common for, I mean, again, going back to the sort of people I work with, shy girls, it's really common for shy girls to feel that they can't say no, but it actually comes from that space of not valuing themselves. So it's kind of like, oh, this guy has come along. Oh, aren't I lucky that I have a guy come along? Or it could be a girl, but it's like, aren't I lucky that I have someone who's interested in me in sex? Oh, yes, well, I better say yes because they're interested and I just don't value myself. And I'm just happy to have anyone interested in me. And so the journey to healing that is in a way the same as I talked about at the beginning. It's about becoming embodied. It's like a lot of people on this planet aren't truly in their bodies, and I definitely wasn't, which was why I had the big collapse of my body, because I just wasn't connected to her. And so part of the journey of healing that is to start to learn how to be really embodied and to learn how to love our own bodies. And then we're not in, so when we start to love ourselves and not reject ourselves, nobody else can reject us. Yeah. So it's like, so we're in that space then. When we love ourselves, we're able to say yes or no, because we know that we'll be okay on our own. And some people, I had a male friend say to me, oh, so are you advocating that women just get to love themselves and never have a sexual partner? And I'm like, no. I'm all for having partners. But it's like, but it's just being in that space when we know we're okay on our own. When we know we're okay on our own, that space when we can have a really good relationship. But it's not from a space of need, but it gives gives us that power to be able to say no when it is a no. And it also gives us that possibility of knowing. It's like when we're not in our bodies, we don't know if someone's good or bad for us because we've vacated our bodies. We have no way of knowing. But when we've started to really inhabit our bodies, we'll know, okay, this guy, he looks kind of enticing and handsome and sexy, but actually, if I'm really, really, really present, I know he won't be good for me. It's like we've all been there, haven't we? It's just being willing to be really, really aware of what is going to happen next if you say yes to somebody. Because we know sometimes we've said yes and we have a sense that it's not going to end well, but we still choose it. So it's being willing to know that if we say yes to somebody, we may have a sense beforehand that it's not going to turn out well.
Yeah. And I know most of us, we look at the physical body, and then from there our brain does its thing, and then the heart, and it's connected, but for me, that it's sacred. And if someone cannot see my soul and they like my physical body for a short-term pleasure, entertainment, they better run far away from me. Right? For me, it's sacred. It's a soul connection, and I've yet to find that person. I'm not fishing though. Please don't message me about it. Right? It's the soul connection. When you know, you just know. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You just know.
Yes.
Yeah. I know we're running out of time, so I have well, I'll let you share anything else that you may have wanted to share that we didn't cover. Go ahead.
I think we've covered a lot of ground. I mean, your questions are brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground, but I guess what I'd like to say is, if you're listening to this and and you feel that you're different. So it's very, very common for women who feel shy with sex to feel different. So it's like, oh, it's okay for Fiona, and maybe Bernadette was never shy, but it's okay for Fiona because of this, that, and the other. That's what our minds can do. So I just want to say to you, whatever your mind is doing, whether your mind is telling you you're too old, or you're too fat, or you're too thin, or some of the women I work with have been in a long-term relationship with somebody who they thought it would never end. So some of them have been widowed, or, relationships sometimes end when we don't want them to. And so they're women who are in their 40s, 50s, even 60s, who are like, I have no idea how to date again. I was never shy when I was 20, but I feel shy now. So whatever your circumstance, whatever blah, 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 your mind is telling you, I just want to say you are able to have the sexual pleasure that's your birthright. And with that, the enjoyment of your whole life. It's like whoever you are, you're able to have that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I think moms, they do struggle with dating. So yeah, you guys are not alone in that, right? We may be younger, but we're having our issues over here too. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah. So I have two questions for you as we wrap up. The first one is, what is the meaning of life for you?
Oh, so it's funny that I laugh when I say that, because actually having been through all kinds of sort of spiritual things, and I was a Buddhist for a while, I truly believe that the meaning of life is actually to enjoy ourselves. But with that it goes the kind of, when we're enjoying, we're naturally kind to other people. We're naturally kind of outward looking as well as inward looking. So I would say it's enjoying life.
Awesome. My last question for you, Fiona, where can my listeners find you, work with you, and support what you're doing?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So if you're on Facebook, you can find my Facebook group, which is called Sex and the Shy Girl, and that's where a lot of what that's where a lot of us hang out and where a lot of the stuff happens.
That's where the party is.
That's where the party is. Yeah, Facebook group party, Sex and the Shy Girl. Or you can message me on Facebook, Fiona Cutts, or my email address is fiona@fionacutts.com. Those are the best places to find me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Fiona, thank you for blowing my mind today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you are one powerhouse.
With the questions.
Yeah.
You're brilliant with the questions and the way you ask them. So I really thank you.
Woman to woman, honestly, thank you. That's all I have to say. I can't find any more words just than thank you, because it's coming from a very raw, authentic place in my heart. And please keep doing the work that you're doing. I hope you train people to do what you're doing as well, because it's really needed.
Yeah.
Anywhere in the world, it's needed. And thank you for sharing right here on my playground on the podcast. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Bernadette.
Yeah, you're welcome.